John Haggerty's trial has also shined a spotlight on what some say are lax election laws when it comes to campaign finance funding. My next guest is calling for the elimination of a loophole that allows unlimited donations to political parties for what's called the housekeeping account. He's Bill Mahoney from NYPIRG. I'm sure you recognize him. Bill, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
So housekeeping account sounds like they pay for like Drano or something, but that's not what this is about.
Yeah, in theory, if you give money to campaign committees belonging to political parties in the state, they're allowed to receive unlimited amounts of money from you.
Right.
They're supposed to spend this money only on things that are completely unrelated to elections, such as buying Drano or office maintenance or things like that.
Right.
But in reality, we've seen time and again that these things are continually bordering closer and closer to spending directly on elections. And part of that came up in this trial. The prosecution actually argued that Bloomberg gave this housekeeping money to the Independence Party, so therefore they can spend it on his election, which seems to conflict with the spirit and the word of the law, but...
Well, we've seen, I mean, when you say conflict with the spirit and the word of the law, another thing that you're seeking is, and you have always been seeking, is better enforcement. I mean, the enforcement is lax, and it has been forever, pretty much. Yeah,
in theory, the Board of Elections should have hopped right on board this months ago, or a couple of years ago, when the size of the contribution was revealed, and there was this large $750,000 expenditure that was not explained in any detail.
Right.
They should have been audited and checked out, and we think that would go a long way to cleaning up a lot of the state's problems. If the IRS were to announce tomorrow that they're not going to perform any audits on committees, then a lot of people would probably start cheating on their taxes. And we've got that at the Board of Elections right now. They do no audits. Committees just file, and they're not looked at by anybody but reporters and occasionally DAs. And people are tempted to do things like this.
Well, and you. And good government.
I help the reporters
well,
look at
thank
this.
God, because your spreadsheet talents are legendary, and mine are terrible. The thing is, though, and we should just explain, there are limits on campaign committee contributions for elected officials and for standard campaign committees. The housekeeping committee is this other animal, right? And there have been people who have said, just do away with the thing completely because it is in a gray area that seems to invite fraud, actually.
Yeah, some legislators have proposed completely eliminating it. I believe Sheldon Silver's campaign finance reform bill from a couple years ago had that, as did former Governor Patterson's. I know a couple legislators right now, such as Senator Kruger, have bills that clean up that.
That'd be Liz, not Carl.
Actually, Carl.
Really?
Yes, Carl has a bill that cleans up that loophole.
Oh, that's interesting. We're talking about a gentleman who is fighting a corruption charge, federal corruption charges.
It raises a lot of questions. But
Indeed. I mean, it raises questions also about how realistic and these people are in really pushing for this sort of thing. I know that the Assembly has passed one House bills when it comes to campaign finance reform for quite a number of years now, and then the Senate sometimes passes its own package because they know that neither one of them, it's in nobody's interest to get together and actually do something that's real.
Yeah, Governor Patterson and Governor Spitzer both pushed really hard for this, but they were unable, particularly in the Senate, to get anything through. Right now we've got a governor with a higher batting average with the legislature than either of the previous two, and he's explicitly promised that he would deal with this in his first term. He spelled out in the very first briefing book he came out with, the first issue was campaign finance reform and cleaning up Albany.
Right.
So hopefully he takes this on next year and is able to get this through the legislature.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that Eliot Spitzer tried to do is leverage other things that he knew the legislature wanted by horse trading, really, by tying things together, that he knew that the Senate wanted something, and so he would trade it, ostensibly, and that just didn't work.
Yeah, they tied a lot of things together under Governor Spitzer and his campaign finance bill. For example, congestion pricing was tacked on.
I remember.
The Senate Republicans were pushing really hard for that. Some people thought that may have been because they were actually receiving large housekeeping contributions from Mayor Bloomberg.
Mayor Bloomberg, indeed. Yeah, it's very interesting the way that this works. I mean, and this trial, we should be clear, is not going to lead to any campaign finance reform. All it did would be provide yet another sort of example of how much we need to address this problem.
Yeah, it might cause a couple potential violators of the law to think twice before doing anything in the next couple of years. But this isn't going to change anything in the existing law. We still have a Board of Elections that does not enforce the election law at all and lets these types of violations occur without investigating them at all.
Isn't part of the problem there, though, that you have, by design, a bipartisan operation that can't act unless everybody's on board, and so they deadlock all the time?
Yeah, the Board of Elections is set up with 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats, and you need to get at least 3 people on board before you do anything. So what tends to happen is if a Republican violates the law, then both of the Democrats will be in favor of enforcing it while the Republicans will sit on the sidelines, and the reverse is also true. And so we've supported adding a fifth member to the Board of Elections, somebody who's jointly agreed upon by the others, or possibly appointed by somebody who's not one of the Board of Elections chair people. And there have been different proposals for that over the years.
Do you know when the last time the State Board of Elections conducted a significant audit was?
A random audit, I do not know. We've foiled in the past a list of all the people they've gone after for violating the campaign finance law. And basically what it is, if you file your forms a day or two late, you get hit with a $25 or $50 fine.
Right.
They basically just do, every filing period, one bulk mailing to all those people and fine them $25, $50, and that's all that we've ever found in the past.
But line by line, careful auditing of the sort that the IRS might do, where they would knock on my door and ask for my receipts so I could back up my expenses, of the sort that the Campaign Finance Board in New York City does, for example, although it takes them years, is not done at the state level.
Yeah, district attorneys do it a lot more often than the state campaign finance or the State Board of Elections.
I'm sure Governor Cuomo has 3 more years, almost a little bit over that, left in his tenure, so we will see if he pushes any harder, because he certainly didn't. This year he had other things on his plate.
Yeah.
Bill Mahoney, I want to thank you very much for being here.